right, we're going to go ahead and get started then, just to make sure we respect everyone's time. So thanks everyone for coming today. We'll all introduce ourselves. I'm Sarah Merriam. I'm one of the women's health clinician educators clinically based up at the VA.
I'm Allie Dukoski. I'm a hospitalist and yes, lots of other things.
I'm Drew Klein. I'm one of the first year general medicine fellows.
I'm Jen Rodriguez. I'm a hospitalist and not a lot of other things.
All right, and today we're going to be talking about on the topic of avoiding death by meeting. Hopefully we'll leave this workshop today with some skills to run an effective team meeting. So our big overarching objectives today are to identify different types of meetings, their goals, and then aspects of pre-planning to consider to ensure success. We will also discuss and apply strategies for running effective meetings, including managing your constituencies, leveraging engagement, allocating responsibilities, ensuring follow-up. So just to get started, I want everyone to think about a recent meeting that you attended, okay, in the past week to month. Did that meeting go well or did it go poorly? So maybe reflect with a person sitting next to you or in your mind, take a couple minutes and talk about what happened in that meeting that either made it go well or poorly. And we'll come back to those things.
Right.
We'll come back together. I heard some laughter, so I'm assuming that people had things to talk about here. So what are we going to do today? We are going to watch together 2 video clips, okay? These are going to be clips of meetings that have gone disastrously wrong. We are going to watch those actively, think about naming the problems. And we'll debrief this kind of, again, in pairs and small groups and then also as a large group. And then after we watch those 2 video clips and kind of debrief them together, we'll go through some slides briefly talking about some common meeting pitfalls. We'll identify the challenges therein and also some options for intervention to facilitate your meetings. Then we're going to revisit our meeting, hopefully gone better, and also debrief that. And then we'll leave some time at the end for questions. So again, we're going to start with the video clips and discussion. So it's your turn. What I would like everyone to do is really observe this deliberate. And what I mean by that is I would like you guys to actually take notes. So if you have pen, paper, scratch sheet, your iPhones, whatever you use, that would be great. I want you to be paying attention. We'll give you direction, but in the first clip, we're going to have you pay attention to the meeting attendees. In the second video clip, we're going to have you pay specific attention to our meeting leader. I want you to look for both verbal cues that go well or poorly, as well as the nonverbals. And beyond just saying that was bad, I want you to be in your mind thinking about why was that bad or why did that derail things, or what went well and why did it go well. All right? So with that, we're going to pull up our first clip.
Dr. Anna Donovan has been the clerkship director for many years and has been around the block and seen it all. Twice. She did not agree to help out with interviews for the residency program this year since she sees herself as an undergraduate medical education. Dr. Nigel DeCruz is an extreme introvert. He also happens to be a specialist in addiction medicine. He just launched a new rotation for the residents in his clinic, which is getting great evaluations. Dr. Sarah Merriam is new in her role as the program director, and she is finding it challenging to manage all of the different personalities on her team. Dr. Missy McNeil views herself as a strong resident advocate. She sees things in black and white, and she is not afraid to have the tough conversation for the sake of improving our residency program. She often gets carried away in meetings with her passionate speech. Dr. Drew Klein has very enthusiastically just started his chief year and comes to the table with lots of new ideas. He is very eager to present his ideas and loves to contribute to the development of the program. Dr. Allie Dukoski is overextended and distracted. She is running a new mini elective that has become busier than she expected. She finds it difficult to engage in the mundane business of APD work right now.
Okay, thanks everybody for coming. We've got a lot on the agenda today, so it's going to be a busy meeting. Why don't we get started with you, Nigel? Can you tell us a little bit more about how the new addiction rotation is going?
I'd love to. I didn't realize I'd be doing that right now, but
Okay. Since Nigel's not prepared to talk about the addiction rotation, I'd like to propose we talk about the neurology rotation. We should do an old rotation before a new one, because it's really a mess. I met with one of my advisees, Cindy, this week, and she says it's terrible. She says most days she doesn't know where to go, nobody gives her any instruction, it's just a mess.
Okay, that sounds like a mess. Drew, have you heard anything about this?
Yeah, I've heard some similar things from other residents.
What do they say?
Well, it sounds like it's really dependent on which site they're rotating at. Where was it?
Choose a community.
Okay. Nigel, you're at community, I think. Have you heard anything about this?
Well, actually, I've heard of
We've got similar issues at the VA with neurology too.
Where have you heard this from? Your advisees?
I mean, I've heard this forever. We've tried to fix this before. It can't be fixed.
Well, I just want to emphasize that the feedback isn't all bad. I mean, I think that this rotation has a lot of potential, and that an inpatient neurology experience is really invaluable to our residents. If we could just get everyone at the table.
Really, this is a waste of time. We've been down this road before. Cindy was really frustrated by our experience. This rotation's a waste of time. Allie, you heard anything about this? You haven't waited a minute.
Allie, can you maybe join that conversation here?
We're talking about the neurology.
Sorry, what, neurology rotation?
Yeah.
The one at community?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's bad.
All right.
All right.
Okay, so, oh good, 4 people. So, what did you guys think of that? Anybody see themselves in any of those people? I mean, other than the people who were in the video. Anyone see anyone you recognized? Yeah. Okay. Anyone have any, we're gonna brainstorm about a couple of the behaviors that you saw in our attendees. And then again, for the second half, I'll remind you, we're gonna talk about how Sarah did herding our cats in our meeting. Anyone want to share what you observed about some of the behaviors of the attendees? Iman.
So there was an agenda, it seems like, but there was no one was sticking to the agenda. It seemed like one of the people was not prepared, so maybe the agenda wasn't known about beforehand. And then another participant just took over the agenda.
Right, so what I will tell you is apparently Sarah had an agenda, but I don't think any of us knew about the agenda. So she walked in the room and said, we have an agenda, we have a lot to do, and I'm not sure any of us really knew how much we had to do or what the agenda was. You're right. What else? Yeah.
The room setup was probably as it was so that the camera could capture everyone. That being said, the first thing I noticed was that it was sort of a funky V shape that people really weren't on FOSS. And so that maybe didn't facilitate a position of leadership. That person might then present the agenda. And there were no rules sort of delivered at the beginning, not to sound too scripted, but I mean, sort of
right.
Here's how we're going to run the meeting, and I'll present this first, and then we'll have discussion, or however they want Sarah wanted to run the meeting.
Great, so you brought up 2 points. I'm going to repeat everything because we're being recorded. So the couple points that you brought up are really good ones. One is the geography and how does the rooms help you run a smooth meeting and be deliberate about what your purpose is and who and where leadership sits. And then you also talked about ground rules, which are different from agenda setting about who's going to talk and how we're going to do some of these things. And is this going to be a group discussion or is this just going to be led by the group leader? Those are really good points. What else? Anybody see what I was doing? Yeah. Have you ever seen, I mean, I played it up, I guess, but have you seen that? Has anyone yeah. Do you call them out? Usually? Yes. You do? Okay. All right. Yeah, so the distracted person is That's a tough one because it's so overtly disrespectful, but it happens so often that I think we forget how disrespectful it is. And then who have we not addressed? What other behaviors? So we talked about the distracted person. We talked about the agenda setting. What other behaviors did you see? Yeah.
Something about the personalities. Some people are more optimistic about all everything. Some people are kind of pessimistic about, yeah, this is not normal, this is not going to work. So you kind of do extremes.
Right.
You're trying to reach what is more realistic approach.
Perfect. So we had among the personalities, we've got the distracted, good. We've got the very pessimistic person, which was Anna Donovan. I actually think Dr. McNeil was a bit pessimistic in her outlook on things, but that her role was a little bit different because she interrupted our agenda. And then the expansive optimist of Dr. Klein, who sees the sunshine and everything, which is a really good quality. Yeah. Who did we miss? Yeah.
And then there was the quiet Dr. Nigel.
Yeah. Right.
Who really couldn't get a word in edgewise.
Right.
To Dr. McNeil, who
Right.
was advocating for the residents.
Right. So our quiet, shy person who's not going to be assertive wasn't necessarily given the platform to say what he needed to say and felt caught off guard. Good. Exactly.
And he also wasn't given the opportunity to prepare because, you know, like she went to him first, clearly
Mhm.
expecting that he was going to have something to say. And had he had the opportunity to know that in advance, maybe he would have been more able to.
Right. Getting back to the agenda setting. So we're back in the circle of how important it is for everybody in the room to know what's going on, what's going to be talked about, and what the ground rules of the day will be. What else did we miss? I think you guys hit on all of our behaviors. Anything else that we missed before we go on to the next half of our train wreck?
Well, we were going to talk about the leader.
We're going to show you the second half.
Good news, the meeting's not over.
Yeah. Good news, bad news. Okay, so for this clip, we're going to have you focus on the leader, although there are going to be a couple other things I'm sure to pull out about behavior of everyone else. But things continue to go downhill, and watch for how Sarah does or does not handle the situation.
Listen, these millennial learners are impossible to please, so it really doesn't matter what we do.
Okay, maybe we should try to get back on track.
Well, I wonder if we could just.
Sarah, I just want to reiterate before you leave this, without a plan, that the neurology rotation is awful. It's a real dissatisfier, and we need to do something about it.
Okay.
Dr. McNeil, respectfully, I really think that if we could just get the key stakeholders at the table, we could really make a difference here.
All right. You know what I'm hearing everybody saying is that it's like a big deal. And it sounds like we probably need to address it. So, you know, I think for the sake of time, let's just move to our next agenda item, and then we'll come back to this, okay? So that agenda item is, you know, our board review conference.
I really don't think we should be making a board review conference.
I know, Anna. I think you mentioned to me that at our last meeting, but nonetheless, I really think that this is an important and valuable experience for the residents.
I'm really excited about this idea. I really think that we could kind of get the whole division and department involved in this. We could get some specialty faculty to come and teach some of it. We could do mock board exams quarterly so that we can monitor progress and how our residents are improving with it.
I think that's a lofty idea. Commend you for that, but I think it might be too much, a little bit too much. Maybe there's some other ideas.
I really don't think we need to generate a board review conference. There are other ways to help our residents prepare for the boards.
When I was a resident, I think I really would have.
I really think our time would be better spent talking about neurology.
Okay, so maybe we could just look and see if there's an online resource for the residents. That seemed like a reasonable plan.
And if we can increase our board pass rates, maybe we could present at a national conference or something. You know, Dr. Dukoski, didn't you present something similar last year?
What, board review? Yeah, maybe we can. See? This is a waste of time. We have other things we can be doing to help our residents.
Okay, so maybe we'll just look into some other options, and again, you know, we can just, you know, we'll decide on something and implement it in the next couple months. But we're really kind of running out of time here, I think. So,
Yeah, listen, yeah, I'm out of here too.
Okay. Well, you know, it's almost 1, so we are kind of running out of time. So regarding the neurology rotation, you know, Missy brought it up. We'll deal with that. The board review conference will look into some other options. You know, Drew, maybe we can have the residents, the other chief residents look at the scheduling issue, and you know, we'll review the evaluations. We didn't have the opportunity, guys, to talk about Jim. You know, he's the intern who's in the CCU right now. It sounds like it's a big disaster. You know, I'm kind of hoping, you know, he's on palm consults next month. Let's just see, maybe he'll simmer down, and then maybe this issue will just go away. And we'll deal with it, you know, next meeting if we have to. We didn't talk about the resident nominations for the awards at graduation either. But you know, I can just look at that list, put together some nominations, send it out to you guys just to say, yeah. And then, you know, I'll take care of contacting them, making sure they're at graduation. And then I guess printing off the awards and framing them. You know, I did want to extend a big thank you to everybody for interviewing, for recruitment this year. We had an excellent match, but you know, I think since everybody's left, I'll probably just maybe send that out via email. All right? Okay, thanks.
How bad do you feel for me?
Right. Want me to describe second?
Sure. Okay. So we ask you this time to kind of focus a little bit on what I, as the meeting leader, did or did not do. There may be some things that you saw in the audience that are just burning in your heart that you feel like you need to put on the board, and we're happy to acknowledge those too. So what did you see the leader do or not do in these challenging situations?
Didn't delegate.
Okay, no delegation, right? She kind of said, all right, I will do this, this, and this with the award nominations, including, you know, framing them. So that was one instance. Are there other instances where you saw that I didn't delegate well?
Well,
the whole meeting
seemed to be a problem with telling people what they should do, what they needed to do for the meeting, what they needed to do during the meeting.
Okay. Sounds good. So not only did I take on a lot of the responsibility myself, I hear you saying that we left kind of things open-ended and very vague. There was no time point identified for the tasks that needed to be done, nor was someone identified to own those. Okay, what else? Yeah.
They were speaking notes about action items. Sometimes the leader does it, or sometimes the person is designated to just sit quietly and take notes on what things are. Sometimes it's good to review those notes from the meetings to come up with action items that we missed during the discussion.
Okay, absolutely. So it sounds like you're worried that some of these vague, not particularly well delegated items might go into the ether because no one was keeping track of them via minutes. So having a scribe or a minute keeper would have potentially helped keep this meeting, as we look forward to the next meeting, on track. Okay? I saw a hand back here.
Poor time management.
Poor time management. Okay, tell me more.
It seemed like your agenda was too much for the time you allocated.
Okay.
So people were leaving because the time was up, and you still had multiple things on your agenda to get through. So
Okay.
people missed out. Sort of, I think, disrespectful of their time to go past what is said.
Absolutely. So poor time management in that the meeting was jam-packed. We clearly didn't get to everything and people had to leave early, and you noted that that's actually disrespectful to the attendees' time and effort. Yep. Also, the way that our attendees maybe left could have been smoother. Anything else you thought in terms of the items that were discussed versus weren't discussed in this meeting? Yeah.
So, like the issue of the learner who's flailing in the CCU seemed like it probably was important.
Okay.
If this was the right group to talk about it, it should have been brought up
Okay.
earlier. Or if there was no time identified, like a additional group or meeting or whatever way that you were going to address it, because you kind of were like, well, I guess hopefully we'll just.
Yeah. Seems like the learner that was struggling in the ICU was kind of just punted, and that seemed to be certainly maybe more important than the resident award presentation, right, for that group to discuss. And so the triage and timing of the items on the agenda maybe was A, too much, and B, not arranged in a way from most to least important. Sure. Yeah.
I think it would have been nice for you to lead while everybody was there, just saying thank you for all the effort. Like,
Yeah.
that would have been a good setup for the rest of the meeting. But another area was that you really didn't have control. Even when you tried to say, I think that we should focus or move on to whatever, there was both a negative and a positive comment after that cut over you. And you didn't interject at all. You just let them
derail me. So you pointed out two nice things. One is that the thank you to the group was unfortunately missed by probably several of the group members who were deserving of that thanks, not Anna, who didn't interview, right? Or Drew, who may or may not have interviewed, right? So the thank you was missed, and moving that up front may have been helpful. And two, I didn't do a good job. I was very passive in letting myself be hijacked, letting the meeting go on different tangents. I didn't do a good job of redirecting the discussion back to the topics at hand. I saw two hands over here.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, particularly I was struck by the fact that poor Nigel didn't get a chance to talk in the meeting.
Yeah.
It would have been nice as a leader to give him space to sort of protect him so he could contribute.
Sure. So especially for the people who dominated the meeting are the dominant voices. The negative Nancy, the hijacker got a lot of talking time, and poor introverted Nigel really was neglected, and he may have had some really valuable contributions to several of these topics.
But just on the non-closing thing, you let the discussion just kind of peter away. Either we need to finish this thing with neurology, or we're going to drop this now and move on to something else. You kind of transition to the other topics without ever saying we're done talking about neurology now, or we're going to fix neurology.
Right.
We're going to make a decision about neurology now.
So I did kind of like two terrible things. One, I let the meeting get totally derailed to talk about neurology, and then I did the whole discussion a disservice by not actually making a decision or an action plan about that item that I let derail my agenda.
And then people kept talking about neurology.
Yep.
And so it seemed like you sort of went about like your attitudes to defer on most of the things.
Yeah.
I would have walked out of the meeting and said this was a total waste of my time. As
Right.
an attendee. Like nothing that was actually on the agenda was addressed or solved.
Mhm.
There was no clear outcome. You kind of pushed the neurology thing like under the table, but also the flailing intern. You're like, I'll take care of that. We'll go on to some other rotation. Everything was just sort of deferred to another time.
Yeah. So we just punted everything or left it in the ether. And what I hear you saying aptly, and I think we've all been at meetings like this most probably, is that that's a frustrating experience for your attendees because it feels like a waste of your time because no forward progression was made during that hour that you gave. Okay. Any other thoughts? What about any other attendee behaviors that we missed?
I think that the attendees almost wanted to focus on a problem that everybody knew was a problem and nobody was really going solutions or be very specific about what we could actually change. So I think that's both attendees and leader, like maybe saying like, hey, okay, we know neurology rotation is a problem. What are the specific issues and how can we fix them? Or the people also just being more solutions focused. It almost seemed like a vent session.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. So the meeting was waylaid by this neurology rotation, and it was a very complaint-focused session and not very positive solution-focused, which really made it hard for the leader to move forward through that because there was a lack of concrete information, and part of that is the person who's bringing the complaint's responsibility. And part of that is the meeting leader's responsibility to name that, identify the problem, and then move forward because it sounded, what I'm hearing you say is you can't really move forward when you don't have anything, a concrete problem that you can then brainstorm a solution for. Okay?
It just seemed like a discontented group of people, you know? And it also makes you wonder, like, there could be things going on that really have nothing to do with that meeting or those issues that make it hard for certain people to work together or to be collaborative. And it raises the issue that sometimes there are like bigger picture issues that need to be addressed in order to like create like an optimal environment for people to work together towards a common goal.
So generally morale seemed to be low and motivation seemed to be low in that room, and we could postulate why that is. Maybe everyone is frustrated because we keep having these weekly or bi-weekly meetings in which nothing is happening, right? And I think that is actually a danger of having a meeting that's held at a same time, same space on a scheduled basis. It can be very easy to fall in this trap. We're having this meeting because we always show up in this meeting at this time, when really is there something active we need to discuss or not? right? So is there actually a purpose for this meeting? And is the meeting being productive? Are the goals of the meeting being met? And if those things aren't happening, you may see a lot of discontent in your group. Sure.
Well, I would actually add that the arc of this, the result of this will be, then people start coming and not talking, and the silence will follow, and then in 3 or 4 weeks nobody shows up at all, and you have no chance to even get everything back on track. So this was kind of the harbinger of terrible to come.
Okay. Any other thoughts about this set of clip before we move to our next section? Okay. All right. Good. All right. Now we've done you guys have done an excellent job of naming a lot of the bad, and we haven't really talked about strategies to be better. Oops. So what I'd like to do now is go through some tools that we can use to run a more effective meeting than the one that you just saw. So we'll kind of go through this. This is we're happy to be interactive here, so if you have questions, feel free to interrupt me. I think, when I think about running a meeting, there are basically 3 big phases, right? There is the planning phase, which is arguably where I think you should be spending the most of your time, effort, and energy. There's the actual running of the meeting itself, and then there's the meeting close and that which follows. So we're going to take it section by section. So before the meeting, I think the first step is identifying the purpose of your meeting. And we were just talking about this. Is there a need to run the meeting, yes or no? If the answer is no, then you probably shouldn't have the meeting. If the answer is yes, hopefully it's not one of these reasons. Oops. Like seeing people, showing charts, feeling important, and eating donuts, although food is always appreciated, impressing your colleagues. So if the answer again is yes, then I think the first step is identifying, what are your overarching goals? There are multiple reasons for having a meeting. One may be seeking input for a decision, which is a very process or discussion-oriented focus. One may be to make a decision, which is a very task-oriented process. So in this clip, the guy says, "Phew, it was close. We almost decided something." And I think that was exactly the sentiment I felt when watching this clip here. And then the last one is to share information, and this has a sentiment also that I've felt many times, which is, I just survived another meeting that should have been an email. I think by and large there are few meetings that should be held for the sole purpose of information sharing. Those probably should be held with a large group of people on a fairly infrequent basis. For example, a faculty meeting, which is important to communicate a message to a large group in a consistent way. By and large, I think for the more regular meetings that you're attending, if you are the person leading the meeting and you want to share information, I would purport that maybe a better way to do that is share the information before the meeting. That allows your attendees time to think about, digest the meeting, especially if you're going to either have a brainstorming discussion about it or make a decision about that information that you're sharing, because it allows people to process and be better contributors in the meeting itself. And it saves you time, effort, and energy, right? It allows everyone to be more prepared. Once you've identified the purpose of your meeting and kind of thought about how then you're going to structure the meeting, you need to always identify AV needs. These are things like slide presentations, video conferencing, teleconferencing, making sure that you have the equipment you need and that it's working. So for example, today we showed up early to test our slides, test our audio, in the event that things had gone wrong. Having a backup in the event that does happen to you, because that won't happen to all of us at some point, is a good thing to do. And then using humor in the moment can help you move through it. Somebody discussed, I think, meeting setup. I think that's really important when you have the ability to control it. So here I've showed 3 different room setups. The first is this U-shaped cabinet. This is a nice setup. It shows that members are generally equal in standing, but leaves no doubt about who the meeting leader is. And also provides a really good mechanism if you're going to be showing audio-visual content. The middle piece is the auditorium style, which is how you're set up now. That's ideal if you are going to be, again, no doubt to whom the meeting leader is, and also a good way to convey large amounts or share large amounts of information. But unless you're doing small group kind of pair share, a really hard way to get a lot of group interaction or small group discussion. So that is the limiting factor of the auditorium style. And then, you know, almost the opposite of the auditorium style is the round, right? Which is really good to foster dialogue, small group discussion, brainstorming. Really hard though if you're trying to show audiovisual stuff, and it really can leave the leader out of the picture unless, you know, they're up at the room or doing something else, moving around. You need to engage the right participants at your meeting, right? So everyone that needs to be there should be there, and people who don't need to be there shouldn't be there. I think certainly, maybe, has anyone attended a meeting where you've had a really nice discussion, a brainstorming session, you've come up with an idea that you want to move forward, but a key stakeholder wasn't there and you needed that person's approval or input before moving forward, right? That's a frustrating moment. So making sure everyone needs to be there if you're going to make a decision is key. You know, the other flip to that is if you really want to have an honest discussion about something that's got high emotional content, maybe it's better to leave the meeting leader out of that space, or people who are higher on the hierarchical chain out of that space to allow for that more forthcoming discussion. We spoke many times about agenda settings. Agendas are near and dear to my heart. I would suggest including this as your first item. Review and modify the agenda as needed. What does this do for you? It allows you to be flexible in the moment. It allows for your team members to get off of their chest those burning issues that they want to discuss, and it identifies a time for it, and then it gives you as the meeting leader to re-triage if needed. Wow, that seems important, we should prioritize that today, and now I'm going to bump X, Y, or Z from the agenda. Or, that seems important, we don't have enough information to discuss it, let's come back to that next meeting. But it allows the potential hijacks to happen right then and there, as opposed to when you're in the middle of another agenda item, or in the last 5 minutes you hear about some late-breaking issue that really, wow, you wish you would have had the time and space to address. Listing the agenda items as questions the team needs to answer can be really helpful, especially as you send your agenda items out in advance of the meeting. Rather than Jim in the CCU, nobody knows what that means. If you can say Jim is struggling in the CCU for these reasons, what are our next steps in, you know, diagnosing him or triaging this issue? That allows your team to be more thoughtful, contribute more during the meeting. It also allows you as a meeting leader to identify when you are off topic. If it's not directly related to that question, then you can move the discussion back. We also talked about this, identifying a realistic amount of time for each topic. We know this, oftentimes meeting agendas are overfull and you don't get to attend to anything well. So underfilling your agenda if you ever have a doubt. And then if there's a bigger issue, can you break it down into smaller parts? Can you delegate parts to subgroup working groups before you come back as a team to avoid letting one agenda item take over the entire time? And then identify who's responsible for leading the discussion. It doesn't always have to be you, and this is a really great way to loop in your quieter, Nigel, introverted team members. And then make the agenda bell-shaped. Has anyone heard of this idea before or used this process? So the bell-shaped agenda is something that looks like this. Essentially, you start off with the easy things, the welcomes, the introductions, but really what I would highlight here is the celebration of successes. That most people are there within the first 5 minutes of your meeting, hopefully. It allows you to catch all those people and acknowledge their contributions. Saving the most difficult issue that you're going to have, the brainstorming issue, the complicated decision you need to make for the middle of the meeting, and then leaving those items for discussion only or for preview or things that are lower on your priority list that can be bumped should the first part take longer than you anticipate, leaving those towards the end. That's the idea of the bell-shaped agenda. I think it's a helpful one as you're planning. And then once you've made your agenda using all of these thoughtful things, you have to A, stick to it, and B, distribute it with a sufficient advance notice that your participants can prepare to contribute for your meeting. And it also means you have to watch your time and be thoughtful about time. So once you've done all of this nice pre-planning, the next phase is kind of running your meeting. So when you open, again, start on time, don't run late, and early if possible. This is respectful to your meeting attendees. Making introduction and assigning roles is important. We talked about things like the time keeper, the minutes, etc. I really think that establishing ground rules can be done well. especially things about confidentiality or electronic devices. If that's important to you, make it known to your group early and set that culture. It will carry forward. And then avoid late capping for latecomers or recapping for latecomers. That is a key waste of time, right? And if you always start on time and avoid that recap, then by and large, again, that will forward feed and people will be there on time. When you close your meeting, you want to make sure you're summarizing the key action points, who will do what by when, and you have to deal with any unfinished business. There are basically 4 ways you can do this. It's a time-sensitive decision, but it doesn't require the full group's input. Delegate those, right? Small group, you guys make the decision, come back to me. If it's time-sensitive, but it does require the full group's input, that may be something you need to hold another meeting, right? Sooner than you would otherwise. If it's not time sensitive, but it does require group input, that's something you can bump to the next meeting. And if it's unimportant, just drop it. And don't be afraid to do that if you need to. And then you need to distribute the minutes properly. We'll talk briefly about some attendee personalities. And we're gonna we have a handout. Oh yeah, sure.
Do you feel like you distribute your agenda ahead of time, you tell people this is what we're gonna talk about, this is what we talk about, and then you tell people what we talked about? Are you like saturating their emails? Are you feeling like people are not only hanging out for an hour, but you spend 20 minutes in advance reading the agenda, now I'm gonna have these minutes for 20 minutes?
I think that the agenda itself probably isn't all that long, hopefully. But the thinking points, I don't know. I mean, it's whether you have time and space in your meeting to do that thinking or not. And it also is going to depend on the size of your group and your group's dynamic, right? Similarly, I think minutes are helpful for the task allocation. So do I think that that's overwhelmingly challenging? No. I think that people who don't need the minutes because you've been very clear in the meeting about what their roles and tasks are probably are just going to delete that email or save it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would just add to that, I find at least for me, I don't necessarily spend a lot of time in that, but like I'm heading into a meeting, I might pull it up that morning and like before I leave for work and I'll think about it in the car. Or if I know I'm going to the next meeting, I might pull up the minutes just to see. So I think they're signposts rather than meant to be comprehensive preparatory documents.
Yeah.
Because I think it's more about just thinking about it before you commit. Sometimes you're assigned something you have to do. It's also good to remember that.
All right, briefly we're going to talk about some bad meeting suspects. The meathead, the agenda list, the meeting hog, the hijacker. You may have met some of these people in the meetings you've attended. And we have a handout that encapsulates a lot of this information, so I'm going to move through it really quickly and hold kind of questions. And I will also let Dr. Klein, who designed this beautiful handout, introduce it a little further, but we have some sample language there. So for the hijacker, I think being prepared, knowing which items are going to be controversial and hit specific people's buttons. If you can talk to them before the meeting and let them get it out, that's a good idea. Or if you can't have the time to do that, you need to establish your agenda with your team input and be directive about sticking to it. If somebody makes an off-topic comment that's really important to them, it's important to listen to it, validate it. It may be very important, just not timely. You can then redirect, and just attending to it can be very helpful in the moment. In terms of the wallflower, this is someone you want to gently and strategically engage, right? You can invite members to participate by cold calling, and it's important to do that by leveraging someone's, if you know they have a strength or a specific expertise in an area, that's a place to make that quieter, more introverted person feel more comfortable participating. And then certainly using activities like brainwriting or pair sharing designed to elicit information, or even take 2 minutes and write something down that lets your quiet person think, write, and then have something they feel confident in saying. That can be helpful. In terms of the negative Nancy, you want to explore her concerns. Some of these may actually be very valid and valuable, and ask for constructive feedback. If time permits, again, meet with her prior to the meeting to discuss those items you think you're going to be challenged so you can get her concerns early. And if not, and you know there's going to be an issue that's come up before, have an answer ready to address it in the meeting. And sometimes you just need to agree to disagree. It looks like we're not going to be able to come to consensus on this today. Let's take that decision offline, because that may be a 1-2 discussion that's going to take the whole rest of the group's time, and the meeting is not the place for that discussion to happen. For the expansive optimist, you want to be redirecting of that person's optimism, pointing out unrealistic goals. One nice way to do this is say, okay, that's a really great idea, but how can we, actually achieve that goal? Or use specific questions to gain input from the optimist that will be realistic. Between option A and B, which do you think is more feasible, better option, and why? Okay, so now we're gonna we're gonna come back to our video. I want you to watch for some of these behaviors. Again, we will watch the video and then come back to them in detail.
Okay, thanks everybody for being here today. We have a lot on the agenda. Let me pass it out. This should be identical to the one that I emailed you earlier this week. Nigel, if you wouldn't mind helping us keep an eye on the time, that's great. And Drew, I think we already talked about you wouldn't mind keeping minutes for us. Perfect. So just as always, let's try to keep interruptions to a minimum. So keeping our phones away and certainly on silent. Certainly if there's something urgent that draws you away, don't hesitate to take the call or a page, just do so out in the hallway. And you guys know this, but just for formality's sake, if we do talk about any sensitive resident issues, that stays within the confines of this room. Perfect. So I'd like to start just by looking at the agenda. Before we jump in, is there anything that's urgent that we need to discuss today that's not here?
Yes, I have something I want to put on the agenda, and I so appreciate you giving the opportunity for us to add things. I really want to talk about the neurology rotation because I met with my advisee Cindy this week, and she was distraught. She said most days she doesn't know where to go, there's no teaching, it's really a problem. And something I think we need to address sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a big problem. I'm thinking maybe, who's got a lot to do today, maybe we should take this offline, but definitely touch base within in the next week or so. Missy, would you mind just taking a look back at neurology? I'm wondering if this is unique to Cindy. It sounds like you think it's bigger than that. Or maybe just to Cindy's site, or maybe there's something systemically bad with neurology. That will really help us in the meeting, and certainly if we identify some big broken piece of the rotation, then we can talk about it in our next curriculum committee.
Sure. I'd be happy to do that. I mean, I know Cindy's a bit of a whiner, as this generation can be, but, I think actually I really appreciate the opportunity to look into it more depth.
Yep.
So,
Yep. Hear your concern loud and clear, and it's definitely worth exploring. For now, I'm going to refocus us back to our agenda just to make sure we have enough time to get through everything today. Before we hear about the new addiction rotation, Nigel, I just want to thank everybody for their time and efforts with recruitment this year. We had an awesome match, and I'm just so grateful to all of you for your time. Couldn't have done it without you, so thank you to everyone. Okay? Moving forward, Nigel, what's going on with addiction medicine?
Well, our addiction medicine rollout has actually gone quite well.
Okay.
Resident evaluations are stellar. They seem to be very satisfied and very happy with the rotation, to the point where we've actually increased to 2 residents per block, which is awesome. And the evaluations were actually so strong that we're considering having the medical students join us for an outpatient part of their rotation too. It's really exciting.
That's great.
I think that's a terrific idea. This is unfiltered, but I mean, what if we created a whole new rotation? We could have the medical students joining the residents on, going to AA meetings. They could come to different behavioral health meetings. It could be a complete immersion.
I just don't see how any of this is possible. This is really a non-starter. Allie, don't you agree?
Hey, Ellie. You are a super valuable contributor to this meeting. I just want to make sure we get your thoughts on this issue. We're talking a little bit about the med students on the addiction medicine rotation.
Yes, so I agree. Somebody said, you thought this was a good idea? I agree. I think we absolutely need to find a way to do it. I'm wondering whether we need to sell it a little better, maybe integrate it into what you're already doing. I don't know that it needs to be a big addition to the clerkship, but it's placed in.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Allie. Really appreciate it. And Drew, I love the enthusiasm. I'm a little worried that a totally mandatory immersive medical student rotation might be a little bit of a lofty goal, especially without getting the med school curriculum committee on board. Anna, can you tell us a little bit more about why you feel like it's going to be a challenge to get the med students in for a half day?
Yeah, sure. So the clerkship, as you all know, is already jam-packed with content, and shockingly, these millennial learners don't want to get up any earlier than they have to. They already give me so much trouble about coming in on Wednesdays for the 7 a.m. ethics session, which is once every 4 weeks. On top of that, we really don't have the space or the administrative support to add another site right now, and it's just a non-starter. You're gonna have to look elsewhere.
Listen, I totally hear you. One of the reasons I'm so distracted is that I'm working on an elective right now, and I know that it's really impossible to get this right. But I think that we need to work a little harder to get it in. I think it's necessary for our curriculum.
I just want everyone to know there's only 10 minutes left.
Okay, all right, thanks Allie, thanks for keeping us on track. So I think this has been a good discussion. I don't know that we're gonna be able to make a final decision about this today. But Allie, it sounds like you and Anna, might be able to touch base offline to see if we could figure out some way to work the medical student exposure in the elective, because I agree, it's super important, and it sounds like it's going swimmingly, so that's great. Looking at our agenda.
Unlike neurology.
Okay, and we will revisit this, so looking at our agenda, I think we're gonna prioritize Jim, who's our problem learner in the ICU. Unfortunately, I had invited his attendings to join us today, but they were unable to be here, as noted by their absence. So what I'm gonna propose is, Drew, can I dispatch you to go to the ICU and kind of do some direct observation of Jim? And then Allie, I think you're his mentor, right? So can you just go back and look through his evaluations, see if these behaviors are bubbled up anywhere earlier in the year, if these are brand new. Certainly if either of you think that there's something big or red flaggy that we need to revisit prior to our next meeting in 2 weeks, we will do that. If not, let's make this agenda item number 1 for our next meeting. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So looking at our remaining items, we've got the board review course, and then we've got the resident awards. Since we've got some time before graduation, let's just hold on that for a moment and spend the remaining time today talking about our plans for a board review course.
I really don't think we should be spending our efforts as a residency program faculty preparing a board review course for the residents.
Yeah, I know. You mentioned that at the last meeting. I hear you, but I do think that this is going to be really valuable for the residents. I know we spent, some other people in the room have spent some time looking into other options. Was that you? Yeah, can you tell me more?
Yeah. Well, I looked into a couple of options like we discussed last time. The first was the QBank.
Okay.
It's rather expensive, but a lot of students seem to be very fascinated with it. It seems to kind of be the pulse in the medical school right now, so the QBank is a great option. Additionally, one of our internal medicine fellows, who's really a quite stellar guy, is doing some research on different types of games we can use for the board review. He's got some really awesome templates that we might consider using, like a Jeopardy.
Yeah, listen, I know you love the Jeopardy. I think that needs to be part of something. We are hearing from residents, I don't know, Sarah, if you've heard this, but they're hearing from their colleagues at other institutions that they're getting formal board review training. So whether it's Jeopardy or QBank or something, we need to move forward.
Okay.
If we do that, can we have neurology questions? Absolutely. Okay, all right.
Absolutely, we're all on board. We're all on board. Neurology needs work.
Just saying, don't lose it.
Okay. Allie and Nigel, it sounds like you guys are both really invested in this topic. Can I ask the two of you to look into some of these different options, put your heads together and make a pros cons list for me, and maybe within the next month, let's make a decision to roll something out to the residents.
Sounds great.
Okay. Drew, you've been keeping minutes for us. Could you help us recap our action items from the meeting today?
Of course, yeah. So it sounds like Dr. McNeil, you're going to review the learner evaluations from the neurology rotation, find out if this is a systemic issue or a Cindy issue, and bring it back to Dr. Mario so that we can discuss it at our next meeting. Dr. DeKroob and Dr. Donovan are going to discuss potential options for exposing the medical students to addiction medicine rotation and bring those ideas back to incorporating the input of our medical schools curriculum committee as well to our next meeting as well. Regarding our problem learner in the ICU, Dr. Marion, you're going to try to get the two attendings that she's worked with at our next meeting, and I'm going to follow up with her and then observe her in the ICU, and then we'll be able to prioritize this in our meeting in 2 weeks. And finally, it looks like Dr. DeKroob and Dr. Donovan and Dr. DeKoski and DeKroob. Sorry about that, my notes got messed up here. They're going to review the pros and cons of different board review options and bring them to our next meeting next month as well.
Yeah, the only other addition is that I'm going to look through Jim's emails because he's my mentee.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Perfect. Guys, thank you for a really painless meeting today. I think we've accomplished a lot. Thrilled. Drew, if you don't mind distributing those minutes by the end of the day, that'd be great. And then I will see everybody in 2 weeks. Sounds great. Okay, good. Thanks, everyone.
So Drew is going to distribute, we're gonna wait to distribute?
No, we're gonna
Okay. So Sarah's gonna distribute a handout that has some of our tips and some strategies for leading a meeting. And we're gonna debrief about this video. So what do you guys think went well and I'll wait till What do you guys think went well in this meeting and why?
Do we at least agree it was better than the last time?
Yes, Iman.
So there's definitely an agenda. It was passed out emailed beforehand, and passed out at the start of the meeting. There was an opportunity to adjust the agenda, and then throughout the meeting, certain things on the agenda were prioritized or dropped based on time.
Great. So lots of changes on specifically that the agenda helped facilitate these changes between the first meeting and the second one. So not only was there an agenda, it was distributed beforehand. There was a dedicated time at the beginning of the meeting to reprioritize items on the agenda or add things to the agenda. And then when towards the middle of the meeting, when it looked like they were going to run out of time, Sarah actually dropped something from the agenda to discuss at a different meeting. What else? Do you guys think that giving the opportunity to add things to the agenda actually helped with some of the personalities in the meeting? Oops. How do we make this go away? Thanks.
It may have helped validate some people's concerns, or at least given those people with certain personality quirks a brief moment to say what they want to say.
Right.
But overall, I would say the meeting was very prescribed, and Sarah was very much in control. So no matter, so it was the agenda. She indicated what the agenda was going to be, what the next item was going to be, whether there was going to be an item that was dropped. And then for every situation that came up, you had sort of a prescribed or a great answer or a great way to deflect it, sort of a solution to every element of. And I think doing that also, if they're regulars at the meeting, they kind of know what you mean when you say, let's discuss that offline. That means, stifle, we're going to move on. I'm tired of hearing about that, for example.
Right. That only works right if you actually really do that and discuss it offline.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? If you do that as a throwaway.
I'm a little concerned about starting the meeting with, does anybody have anything else they want to talk about?
Yeah.
That, to me, gives you the chance of that meeting getting hijacked. Pretty, either if somebody brings something up and say, well, if we have time, we'll talk about it at the end, we'll definitely do it the next time. I just, I'm a little bit leery of, hey, anybody have anything else they want to talk about? Because we've only got an hour and a half to cover in the next hour.
Right. So in this meeting, it went okay, but who was the hijacker in this meeting? Or, they were more prominent in the bad meeting, but who was the hijacker, would you say? Missy. So in this meeting, she had the opportunity to say neurology's terrible. Neurology's terrible. I really think we need to talk about neurology. It didn't stop her from mentioning neurology a couple other times, but at least I think Sarah validated at the very beginning, this is important, and then gave her some tasks.
Two other things. One is at some point I would have made fun of the Missy character.
Yeah.
Said, we know you think neurology is important, or that some way to do that, kind of try to deflect it.
Right.
The other thing, I have some kind of general.
Reframe that as using humor.
Using humor.
Rather than making fun.
I would frame it as making fun. I'm also, I can imagine being in that meeting and thinking, we never finish our agenda. We're always putting things off to the next. Now, maybe that's not true, but when you put stuff off occasionally, it's one thing. But at every meeting, it's like, well, we'll talk about that next time. as an attendee at that meeting, at some point you go, what am I doing here? You know, we're never gonna finish anything.
Right.
And I'm not saying that didn't happen, but if
Right.
that happens at every meeting, that would be, to me, would be a concern.
I would say two things. So I think that asking for additional input in the beginning does not mean like, hey, does anyone have anything they want to talk about? What's your soapbox?
Right.
It means, is there anything urgent or important that's not here that I need to hear about? And I think you're welcome to deflect a large majority of those if you need to, right? And I think in terms of this like 10-minute clip of what would have been an hour, we had to like demonstrate some stuff. But I agree with you. Ideally, you're not punting.
If the solution to
5
half the
of
problems
10
is, we'll talk about
items.
this next meeting.
Correct.
At some point, if you're going to that meeting every month, you start to say, you know, why did I come to this one? Because we're just going to talk about it.
Well, the one comment I make is there's a difference between, okay, we'll talk about this next meeting
And having
versus
some assignments. Yeah.
the assignments and the plan, you know.
Or the key stakeholder isn't here, so why waste everyone's time talking? And maybe that means not that you fill that hour with other crap. Maybe that just means you end a half an hour early.
Would it be, and I don't know, instead of asking at the beginning of the meeting, is there something else? If you, when you send the agenda out, having that included, is there something else that you want me to add to the agenda? But that's just.
Yeah, that might be a nice opportunity to get things, to go ahead and deflect the things that you don't want to put on the agenda if you've kind of done it before the meeting.
Something that comes up that's important.
Right. What else do you guys think went well in this meeting? Were there other personalities besides the hijacker that you think did better in this meeting?
It was very assertive, very. They were making decisions, point about acknowledging everyone's concern, validating it, but at the same time, the leaders say was the final. They want to talk about this next meeting, just move on. So they made it very clear that this is not.
Yeah, so the leader had control of that meeting throughout the entire, through the whole time. And when things came up, she validated all the concerns, but she was very good at staying in control of the meeting and not letting it go to the wayside. Yes, Iman.
So I think Nigel did a lot better.
Yeah.
He had dedicated time in the agenda where he could talk, and he was prepared to talk, so that was helpful. And then he also had some expertise in one of the agenda items, the board review, and had the opportunity. He was actually called on.
Right.
And had the opportunity to talk about
Right. So the wallflower knew that he was on the agenda, got to talk about something that he felt pretty comfortable talking about, and got the time during the meeting to give that information to everybody. How are we doing on time? Okay.
Can I make one comment?
Yes.
Where we really tried hard when we did the good meeting to have the personalities still be the difficult personalities, to not have them just be like more charming in the second. So, so there really is skill to managing the difficult personalities. The other thing I want to point out that I thought worked really effectively is when there was sort of interpersonal disagreement, like between Anna and Allie about the clerkship. She just said, you guys go work it out and come back. You don't have to fix everything there. You guys clearly see it differently. You're both important stakeholders. Let me ask you guys to work together and come back. And that's a great, because that way you put it in their court to negotiate rather than the leader having to be set up as the arbiter of who's important.
Yeah, she was very strategic about who she picked, who she delegated tasks to work on together. And did you guys notice the clerkship director who didn't think that there should be a resident board review? What happened there? Did you guys notice what Sarah did?
She said, shut up.
Yeah, she didn't include her. I mean, she validated her and she said, I know, I've heard this. But then when she asked Allie and Nigel to take care of that agenda item and excluded the negative Nancy that really doesn't have input. Okay. All right.
And then I wanted to turn it over to Drew, who has made a handout. I'll let you introduce it. And
Hey, Drew, I'm going to say that we have 2
Yeah.
minutes. Yeah.
We're out of time, but we essentially just distilled down a lot of the techniques that we discussed today into this handout. A lot of this is taken from the 3 Harvard Business Review articles that are at the end, which are great reads for you to unlock further resources.
And thanks to Drew for including some sample language on the handout as well, which you are welcome to co-opt if you feel like doing that. So thank you so much. I would also just remind folks who came in late, there are some evaluations that we would like to get your feedback on how this went, and if you have other thoughts for us, if you wouldn't mind filling that out, you can leave it certainly on your chair when you're done. We would really appreciate the feedback as we move forward and do this in other venues. Thank you.